So welcome everyone to our Coach Week extravaganza, and we have been having such a great time. This is Natalie Ashdown from Open Door Coaching, and it's been an absolute pleasure to partner with Synergy Global and Heather Jane Gray, the CEO of Synergy Global, to bring you this Coach Week conference. And we have had an absolute smorgasbord of learning. That's the way I'd like to describe it. And so today we're looking at embedding a learning culture at CSIRO. And for those of you that don't know about CSIRO, it is our leading national scientific organisation that is making a difference to the nation of Australia and also to the globe. And I have with me here Anne Haine, who's the acting executive manager of talent development at CSIRO. It's great to see your smiling face, Anne. So before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the land in which we meet today, and their continuing connection to the land and waters and communities of Australia. And we would pay our respects to them and to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I want to introduce you to Anne Haine, who I do consider a colleague and a friend, and we're very connected in terms of our love of coaching. Anne brings to us more than 25 years of experience in leading teams and projects in the area of learning and development, equity and diversity, and human resource management in the context of Commonwealth and local government organisations. Her passion and primary focus over the last 12 years at CSIRO has been in leadership development. She's led the design and the delivery of CSIRO's highly successful senior and middle level leadership development programs, and she was a key contributor to the design and the facilitation of CSIRO's first innovation accelerator. So it's a wonderful pleasure to have you on the line, Anne, and I'm ready with notepad and paper, a note, pen and paper ready to go just to learn from you. So thank you for your time, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Natalie, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. And can I please just add my voice to the acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the lands, the many lands on which we're all meeting today, and pay my respects as well to their leaders past, present and emerging. Open Door Coaching has partnered with CSIRO for quite a few years now. I didn't go back and look it up, but I think it's maybe 7 or 8 years to support our learners in our leadership development program. Leadership development is the space that I work in and have done for all of my time at CSIRO. But I wanted to make the point that a lot of what I talk about today also applies in other parts of our curriculum. I'll simply be using leadership examples because that's what I understand best. I also wanted to say before I go on that I have led this work from time to time, but not always, and have been part of a wonderful team of professionals. So all of this is teamwork. I can't claim credit for all of it. It also means that you may have questions that I won't know the answers to, and if that's the case, I'm really happy to take those on board and tap into others in the team so that we can get back to you and answer any questions that you may have. So a bit of an agenda, I guess, for today. So I'll start out talking a little bit more about CSIRO, just who we are, then a bit about our commitment to learning as an organisation and how that shows up, I guess, what the artefacts are around that. Then I'll talk about some principles and some frameworks that we apply specifically around leadership development, but also more broadly, and how we over time have learnt to embed learning really deeply. And then I'll use some elements of our leadership curriculum as examples. And I'm just reminding myself to put my timer on so that I don't talk forever. Thanks, Natalie. So if we could go to the next slide. So we are your national science agency. We are about 60% funded in our work by the Commonwealth Government. The rest of our funding comes from a range of different sources, all generated by our science. We're about 5,500 people, mostly in Australia, but we do have presence in Singapore, Vietnam, USA, Chile, and I think France as well. We're on 57 sites, so that adds to, I guess it's one of the elements of complexity of delivering learning opportunities to our people. And we add about $4.5 billion a year in value to the Australian economy. So fairly big efforts there around science and technology and innovation. Also, just to talk about the people, highly educated, so 5,500 people. Last time I looked, about a little over 2,000 of those people have PhDs. Highly educated, but working in a number of different disciplines. Some of the stuff that we work on, so we're currently engaged in work around the COVID-19 testing of vaccines, but we work in many other areas as well. We could go to the next slide, please. So these are the key areas of research. I won't read through them, but as you can see, there's great variation there, and it's one of our strengths, it's one of our differentiators, that we have people who are highly professional, experienced, globally renowned scientists working in all of those fields, and so we're able to bring together multidisciplinary teams to address some of the biggest challenges that we face as a nation and as a world. If you're a science buff, have a look at our website, www.csiro.au. Lots of information on there, lots of really cool science, lots of really impactful science. I never understood that science was cool till I came to CSIRO, but I can tell you it is, so have a look. We're all about impact and about solving the biggest problems that are facing the nation and the world. So we don't do kind of blue sky research. We don't do research for its own sake. We do research for the difference it can make in the world. So moving on to talking about learning in CSIRO and how it's supported. So there are a number of structures in place that send a message, I suppose, that learning is important. And one of them is capability days. So this is an entitlement in our enterprise agreement. Every employee is entitled to a minimum of 5 capability days a year. And those are days to build, as it suggests, their capability in the work that they do. And they negotiate with their leaders as to how they use those days. So they can use them to attend programs on our curriculum, they can use them to attend external programs, they often use them for science conferences. But they can also be used for self-directed learning. And I think it's a really good signal that it's enshrined there. It says we value your learning and your development. Take advantage of that. We also have a study assistance policy, so the provision of support in the form of time off to attend lectures or tutorials and financial support for people undertaking certain tertiary courses. We have an APA cycle that includes development conversations that are focused both on development for the current role and career development. So I think, we're not perfect and the application of those is not perfect, but it's certainly there and something that we highlight a lot, particularly for leaders. We also have a history of providing career development resources. So most recently, we've had 2 face-to-face programs that we've offered on our curriculum to help people identify the career directions that they're looking to take and what are some of the development needs that they would need to pay attention to in order to progress in the direction that they want to. We're reviewing those at the moment, COVID-19 being one of the reasons, but we also tend to review things periodically anyway. So we're having a look at what's going to be the best way going forward to continue to support people in their career development. So this slide is something that we put together sometime last year. We spent some time just reflecting really and reviewing our approach to leadership development. So it's kind of looking inward and backward to what is it that we do, that we value and that we want to keep. And while it says leadership development, and that is what we were focusing on at the time, a lot of these things we do in other parts of our curriculum as well. So the first one is ensuring that our programs are all contextualised for the CSIRO of today and tomorrow. So what that means for us is that no two programs are ever the same. No program that we run is ever the same as the previous iteration, because we're always going back into the organisation, looking at what's top of mind, looking at what's challenging our leaders and our people, and making sure that those things are brought into the room. The second point is that we apply a leadership definition that includes people with significant influencing roles as well as those with line management responsibilities. So it goes beyond people whose job title has manager or leader in it. It's really important for us because we have a lot of senior scientists with worldwide reputations, very good at what they do, who don't choose to lead teams. They may lead projects, but they're not people's line managers. However, they cast a very long shadow, and so it's important that they're the kinds of role models, I guess, that we would want them to be, and that they're reflecting the organisation's values and behavioural expectations, and also that they're aware of and aligned with strategy and able to talk to strategy. So leadership is broadly defined and spelt not with a capital A. The third point is that we co-design and co-deliver our programs with external and internal partners. And the partnership word is really meaningful and important to us. So we don't kind of design a program and bring facilitators in to run it, nor do we design some specs and kind of outsource and hand it over. We very genuinely work together to bring the best of what we bring, the best of what our partners bring, both internally and externally to the programs that we offer. We also apply a diversity lens right from the beginning, so from the design stage through to the way that we promote programs, the way that we select participants and put cohorts together, as well as paying attention to diversity within the content that we deliver. So an example is some years back, we made a decision not to run any leadership program with less than 30% female representation. And at that time, that was really important because we had been running them with a smaller female representation on the programs. And we were getting feedback, and we could observe that that wasn't delivering the best learning opportunity to anyone. So we made a call, picked 30%, and made it known that we would cancel programs where that gender balance wasn't there. It's we've moved a long way. We probably we've never had to consider cancelling anything in the last few years based on that representation. So more and more we are seeing women in our programs. We need to now pay attention to other types of diversity. Increasingly, we leverage technology to extend our reach and create greater returns on investment, and thank heavens we do. So we started to sort of put these things in writing a year or so ago, and at that time had transitioned one of our leadership programs into a webinar-based program from something that had been residential. It's put us in a really good place now, as we're all working from home to be able to continue to offer programs that are run that way and to really quite quickly transition some of the others. Point 6, we anticipate organisational priorities. So we stayed close to the organisation, we stayed close to sort of strategy development and senior leadership so that we can anticipate what's coming up and be ready and be relevant and current when programs are actually put out there. We're a research organisation. Everything we do, everything we put in front of our scientists needs to be evidence-based, and so we need to make sure that that we're rigorous about that and that we are up to date. Our people are interested in, once we start talking to them about leadership and they realise that it's a thing, they take a real interest and they'll often do their own research. So it keeps us on our toes. We engage our line managers to ensure a 70-20-10 approach, and I suspect most of you know what we mean by that, but I will talk about it in quite some detail as we go through. But we always have a 70-20 lens on everything that we offer. And lastly, we start with self-awareness as the foundation of great leadership. So it's certainly a big piece in all of our leadership programs. It's present in many other places as well. I'm going to draw breath, Natalie, and ask you, are there any questions that we should pay attention to at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I think the main question is around partnering with the business. So would you be able to perhaps, because it is a challenge I think that some people have in order, like HR people, learning development people might have in terms of that really staying connected and close to the business. Could you give perhaps a couple of extra words around what you actually do to deliberately stay partnered with the business?
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So when I talk, so our most senior leadership program on the curriculum, you'll hear me refer to it as LAIC, L-A-I-C. Its full name is Leading Australia's Innovation Catalyst. And so that program has been running under that name and in its current forms for about, well, maybe it's about 5 years. And before that for 7 or 8 years under a different name. And so through that whole time, we've had our chief executive has always, it's a residential program, our chief executive has always been a presenter at that program, and that presentation takes the form of a sort of fireside chat, chairs in a circle, and he or she, depending who it was at the time, would talk a bit about their world and then just, throw it open to a conversation. So they've always been a presence in the program, and that really helps because that opens the door for us to have conversations around the structure of the program, the what we're going to be talking about, so that they know that they're kind of relevant in the room, I guess. Most of our executive team have a role in that program, so most of them would come along as a presenter. We engage with them in other ways as well. So that program, like one of the others, has a team challenge, which is a lengthy challenge that goes over 4 or 5 months. It's addressing something that is key to something usually that the executive team's been grappling with and not being able to solve. And our senior executive team are sponsors of those teams. So it's kind of become built into the culture. It was probably challenging at first, but now it's become what we do, and they're part of the conversations. We also work with them to agree what the topic for that team challenge is. So it's lots of conversations, and I think it's taken a long time to get to this point, but it's now very much part of their world as well. The LAIC program, we schedule of more than a year out, and so we're in their calendars a year out, making sure that they've blocked out time for the presentations day at the end of the program. So I think it's just lots of touch points, lots of touch points. I'll talk a bit more about it as I move on and talk in detail about the program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing that the projects that you actually do is a primary way of actually engaging in the business, and that's the partnering you're talking about as well.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
We've long said in the learning and development function, when we put those project topics together for LAIC, if it doesn't terrify us, then it's not challenging.
Right. I must remember that. I must remember that when I'm coaching some of the scientists. You know what? If it doesn't terrify you, it's not challenging. I'll write that one down.
We don't think, if we don't think I don't know the answer to this, and I don't, then it's not challenging enough. And we're certainly talking to senior people about, what's really on their minds, what's the stuff that what's keeping them awake at night that they'd like some help.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So this is our leadership development framework. So just to talk through what's on here a little bit, this is a well-used slide that we use to help people understand what's available to them, help people to understand where they are in the system, I guess, when they're on a program. So down the left-hand side, we've got various roles in the organisation, and they're roughly aligned with the arrows indicate if you're a group leader, for instance, you should probably be looking at doing the experienced leader program. If you're a team leader or a project leader, then look at ready to lead. If you're a team member, then productive collaborations, project management are programs that are sort of starting to dip their toes into the leadership space. And then up at the senior level, we have more kind of tailored, bespoke work for the executive team. The really core pieces are Ready to Lead, Experienced Leader Program, and Leading Australia's Innovation Catalyst, or LAIC, and they're the ones I'll talk the most about. The blue box that's kind of sideways are our career development programs. So programs that people would go into to explore the skills that they bring to the organisation, the attributes that they bring. The Intensive Development Centre is somewhat outward focused, so it looks at mega trends and what's likely to impact careers in the future. The Career Development Centre targets a more general audience and is more kind of skill-based, and work through a process of just helping people to understand where they are now, what they ought to focus on developing, and then whether some of these programs are going to be the right things for them. We're a centralised function. We're not all things to all people. So the programs, the curriculum that we offer is a kind of cross-organisational curriculum. We don't do things that are specific to one business unit or one science area. We will support them to construct things that are, but it's not where we put most of our energy. So most of this is cross-organisation, and it's run on a cost recovery basis. And so we kind of consider ourselves to be part of the market for our people, and we're certainly, we like them to do our programs. They're tailored for us. They've got a CSIRO context, but they're not always the right program at any given time for some people. So we kind of, this is a pathway, but it's not the only way. And if people feel that they're going to get better value for money by doing some other program, something that's external, then they're certainly going to do that. So across the bottom, you can see the 70-20-10. And again, it's a message that we're really clear on with our people, that most learning that people do about their jobs beyond the kind of, the professional training, I guess, that gets them there in the first place, most of what people learn is not learnt in a classroom or a formal setting. And so we want people to be really aware and kind of mindful and reflective as well, that if you are temporarily acting in a position, or if you're on a stretch assignment, or whatever you're doing in the workplace is a learning opportunity, but only if you reflect on it, So emphasising that with our people, that development is not just going to programs. Pardon me. The other reason that this this right-hand column is important is that we embed as much of the 70% into the program designs. So networking and collaborating is a big part of what we do in leadership development. It's why we still run face-to-face and residential programs when we can, and we kind of know that's a luxury. But because we are in 57 different sites and 9 different science domains, and we want people to collaborate, bringing them together to work together, learn together, be vulnerable together, because a lot of this is about self-awareness and vulnerability. So bringing people together to do those things is part of the learning. The informal stuff is part of the learning, the conversations over dinner, the table tennis is part of the learning because it's building those networks. So everything we do in our programs is connected back into the workplace, so that the program itself isn't just a 10% experience. It's kind of a whole integrated experience.
And your comments around 70-20-10 has actually definitely sparked the interest of a number of people on the chat. And so Kay has asked a really good question here around how long did it take to embed the 70-20-10? Because she says in her experience introducing this approach to people, they struggle to consider anything to be development unless they get off-site face-to-face and they get lunch. So it's not just about taking people off-site and giving them lunch. How long did it take to bring these 70-20 principles through, do you think?
So as I said, I've been in CSIRO nearly 13 years, and it had actually been started before then with a program called Leading the Research Enterprise, because we start our leadership programs with a conversation with the manager and the individual, and so that's where we start talking about that. So, and one of the things that happens in that conversation, one of the things we discovered rather than kind of designing was that the manager is learning through that as well. So it's taken a long time and it's lots of conversations, but some of those conversations take place with the manager in the room as well. And certainly when we're having a conversation pre-program, it's a facilitator, one of us in the CSIRO team, or potentially an external, plus the line manager, plus the individual. And part of what we're talking about is what to expect in this program. And that means that you will be practicing what you learn back in the workplace, and part of the manager's role is to notice that and comment on it and provide feedback. I think the answer is lots of little conversations, kind of purposefully structured and purposefully placed into programs, but lots of little conversations where that kind of stuff just gets said over and over. And
yes.
I think the other thing is, because we don't have the numbers to hand, but because a lot of people in the organisation now have been through these programs, they get it, and now they're sending their people to us. So it's become easier. It's become much more part of the way we are.
Yeah, so those referrals, I've had a good experience from the program. I'm referring my team members to come and have that experience as well.
Yeah, can't wait. No, colleagues and my team member.
Yeah, and Jodie's asked another interesting question around, similar to that as well, having such a large PhD cohort. She says, so you're talking about the education level of the scientists, and many of them are world renowned for the work that they do. So she said that must bring some unique challenges, and she's interested, and we'd all be interested in, is there been any particular biggest challenge, particularly in capturing their interest and support around the programs?
So yes, yes, because investing in a program that's around your leadership may mean that you don't go to that international conference this year. You know, there's a limited bucket of funds, so we're always competing with that. So that's one of the challenges. Another, which might not be specifically related to being a scientist, but another is time. You know, these programs take a lot of time. One of them runs over a year. Yeah, not full-time year, obviously, but its duration is a year, so that, you know, I just don't have time to do this. And we have lots of conversations with people where we say, you know, when is the right time? You'll never have the right time. Last year wasn't the right time, and, you know, next year probably won't be either. So, you know, if not now, when? So there's that, but there's other things too. There are things around language. Some of my colleagues may be on the line and will know that, you know, never put up a graph that doesn't have the axes labelled.
Yes, sorry.
And always kind of know your sources and be able to refer people back to the sources, be able to back up what you're saying. Having said that, once you establish that the work we do is evidence-based, we don't get challenged a whole lot. You know, occasionally they'll go back to the scientific paper and challenge, and, you know, that's not a bad thing, but feels challenging, I guess. And another thing for us is they love a conversation in the room, and so that's how our programs work. So, you know, share some theory or some current thinking or the experience of someone in another organisation, bring it into the room and give them time and opportunity to discuss it and to challenge. A characteristic that many people find unusual and new when they come to our organisation is that pretty much everything is up for debate. So anything that comes out of the central functions is up for debate. You cannot say, for instance, here are our values without really in-depth conversations about how we arrived at them and how you as a population were involved in them. And I know that's often more challenging, I guess, than people have experienced in other places.
Yeah, thank you. That's great answers. I find in the coaching that I do, it's about also emphasising that from a practitioner point of view, we know this works, and so why don't you go out there? And I love using the word experiment. So what would it be like to experiment with this and see how you go? And it is actually tapping into what they love to do most, which is experiment.
That's great language, and we do use that, and we also sometimes will ask people to please suspend that sort of scientific criticality, and you know, could you just suspend that, do what we're asking you to do, and when we've finished, can we come back to that conversation that you wanted to have? And that works, and people do engage. They do engage. It's sometimes, and you know, I think it's a myth, it's a stereotype that scientists are not good interpersonally. Some of them are, some of them are not. Many of them have just, their focus has been on a particular domain of science. When they realise that this is really another domain of science, they get really interested, typically, not all. So this is just to say, as I move through, I'm going to focus on talking about those three programs. More just back to 2010, I've talked about it already, but to say that this is kind of how it plays out in our programs. So the 10% is the workshops, webinars, e-learning modules, face-to-face programs, the 20% learning from others, coaching, mentoring, peer networks, communities of practice, feedback, and then the 70% shadow and job rotation, secondments, problem solving, being stretched. And I love the piece across the bottom, learning equals experience plus reflection. If you just do stuff, then you don't learn nearly as much as if you do stuff, take the time to stop and reflect, and take the time to stop and reflect and go through that kind of cold learning cycle. I pinched this slide a couple of days ago out of a pack for the Experienced Leader program, and it had that block on the side that says foundation is great leadership is self-awareness. So, and I kind of thought, do I take that out? Do I leave it there? I've left it there. It's a message that goes to our participants as they're kind of stepping into the program. Got to do that work. Got to be vulnerable. That's the work. Thanks, Anne. So I just wanted to share this with you, although we are in the process of updating it. So this is our current leadership framework, and it underpins the curriculum. So this is a couple of years old. Each time we do this kind of work, we go back into the programs and make sure that they're kind of connected to the leadership approach that we're taking. So this is what I love about this, easy to remember. Put people first, make it clear, get things done. And we do sometimes use a second slide that spells out to another level what that might look like. This is the foundation of conversations we have with individuals and managers going into programs, looking at where are you strong on this, what do you do well, what are the strengths you're going to leverage as you go into this program. We ask them a number of questions. One is, how are you going to show up? Like, how are you going to be in the room? How are you going to behave? What's your contribution? How are you going to contribute to the learning of others in this kind of work? And those conversations are built around that. Put people first, make it clear, get things done. So we're refreshing it to call out a couple of things that you don't see there. One of them is leading self. It's that self-awareness as a kind of key pillar to leadership. And the other thing that we want to be more explicit about in the next iteration of this is leading for the future as well as leading for now. Just to say, it's good to have something that's kind of simple, memorable, that people can hang their hats on when they're going about the business of being leaders and trying to be the best leaders that they can be. Thanks, Anne. So, more about embedding learning. So, some of the ways that we do it. Connection to the workplace. So, I've talked about the connection to the senior executives, but also connection back into their workplace. So, their workplaces are very different. A lot of them are labs, some of them are offices, some of them are radio telescopes and ships. We manage a research vessel for the Australian government. We manage what is now it's just had a name change, Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness, where the COVID-19 work is happening. So these are very different workplaces, and for people coming from those workplaces to us to build their leadership capability need to see the connection. So the stuff that we're talking about and sharing and exploring as a cohort, as a group, how does that play out back in a lab, back at a telescope, on the ship? Secondly, it needs to be strategically aligned. So historically, we haven't been great at that. We've got better at it over the years, and certainly in our programs, it's a focus. So I mentioned before, every iteration of leadership programs, we go back, we look at, are we still relevant? So yes, of course, we're connected to the strategy, but are we current, contemporary? What's going on now? How is the strategy being lived and worked with and worked towards, and are we there? So just always going back to that and making sure that we're not rehashing the same stuff. Also, when the strategy is being updated, we're doing everything we can to have the heads up, to know what might be about to look and sound a bit different. So we engage managers, those pre-workshop conversations, mid, where there are multiple modules, mid-program conversations, post-program conversations, three-way conversations, 360-degree feedback. Yeah. So just keeping them engaged, keeping them knowing what's going on. We also do briefings for managers. We do webinar-based briefings for participants. Sometimes we invite the managers into those, sometimes we do them separately for the managers. I've talked about fireside chats. So Larry Marshall, our Chief Executive, comes out to, it's been Q Station for the last several years, Q Station in Manly in Sydney, that some of you may know. Larry comes out there, sits in a cold and windy place in a circle and, you know, and has a fireside chat that is genuine. So he'll often share stuff that's not to leave the room. So it's really starting to give people an insight into some of the challenges of being a leader. One of our facilitators in the LAIC program talks about the fantasy of leadership, the expectations we set for people with senior job titles and for ourselves as we move into senior roles that are unrealistic, the expectations that we know everything can solve everything. So that senior leader involvement gives them a window into the world of a senior executive, also gives that executive a window into what people are doing in their day jobs and what we're doing. They also facilitate sessions. So most of our executive or senior leadership team, not most of them, but many of them, will come out and actually present a session, and it's a facilitated session. It's not just a deck by PowerPoint. It's working with the people genuinely. And when they do that, they'll mostly stay for lunch. Sometimes they'll come in the night before, have dinner, have breakfast with people. So there's lots of informal connection. And those connections matter. They get to see each other as real people. The participants on programs become less reticent, I guess, to pick up the phone and call someone senior to have a conversation or to call out something that they think they need to pay attention to. Senior leaders also both help us define particularly that LAIC Team Challenge project topic, and we always have 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the number of teams, project sponsors.
And there's an interesting question there from Hayley around, I picked this up as well, that you're talking about messages and the messaging and how important that is. And so would you say that the senior leader involvement in the program is actually, and facilitating the sessions, in fact, is actually a really strong message that this is important to the organisation?
Absolutely. Yes, when the chief executive takes, you know, half a day to drive to where we are, and you know, we're not always in the same place. So sometimes they've flown to where we are as a group. So when they've taken the trouble to be where we are, that's really important. The LAIC program has a presentation day at the end, which is a presentation of the findings and recommendations from the project, and pretty much our whole executive team shows up for that. They now schedule both an executive team meeting for that day or the day before or after. And we also have whole of organisation webinars several times a year, and they'll generally schedule one of those on the same day as well. So they schedule around us so that they can be there. It's powerful, significant.
I think that sounds like a dream for a lot of people on the line. It's like it's the ultimate that the CLT would actually schedule their other major priorities around the major leadership development programs. It's wonderful for you to share what's actually possible and what works.
And it's taken a long time, like that. You know, it's taken a long time. But that's what's happening. That's what's happening now. So it's great. Yeah, it's great. Action learning projects, I'll talk about in a bit more detail about specific programs. We use a number of kinds of coaching. So we have team coaching for projects. We use a proprietary form of transfer of learning coaching that is provided through Lever Learning that is very focused on something that people commit to in the room and holding accountable to that. And then we also do executive coaching, which is kind of, I think of it as higher level and broader and more about kind of transitions, I guess, in careers. And we use job shadowing, so it's another way that we connect with our senior leaders and that everyone in the LAIC program gets an opportunity to shadow someone senior. So the program runs over a year. The first phase is 3 residential face-to-face modules and the team challenge, and the second half of it is executive coaching, job shadowing. We do what we call it, a recall day at the end of the year where we bring them back, just them and us, to talk about how they implemented what they learned. So what are you doing differently as a result of this investment that you and the organisation have made? And the job shadowing is, you know, it's variable, I guess, in terms of how good it is, but what it is not is follow someone around for a week. It's so there's quite a lot of guidelines around it being built around things, significant activities where people can learn, not just watch you, do what you do day to day. Networks and collectives I've spoken a bit about. We do alumni events for our leadership programs as well. So that's about bringing people back together as a collective and extending the collective. So they get very close to the people who've been on a program with them. They get very close, and we even had a wedding once, but mostly not that close. So then it's about broadening that collective and connecting them. And the last thing is giving back. So when you've had this big investment in your development, we expect you as a leader to give back through coaching, presenting, which is another part of how to get that senior leader involvement, because some of them are of our program. So that's kind of in principle. What I'll do now in the next 15 minutes, or hopefully a bit less than 15, is I'll just talk through some of the specifics of those 3 leadership programs, and then maybe we've got time for some more questions. So can we go back
Sorry about that.
To the one more, yeah. So this is our Ready to Lead program. So that's our Ready to Lead program. It's our foundational leadership program, so we used to have something called Leadership Essentials, which was a 3-day residential. We initially went to this webinar-based format. We ran them in tandem for a while. We initially went to this webinar-based format. It was from a position of inclusiveness. We wanted to make the program available to people who weren't able to do that, who couldn't travel, couldn't be away for 3 days because of family responsibilities usually, or for some other reason. So what we found over a number of iterations of this program was that it was more cost effective and people preferred it. We expected to get some negative feedback when we closed down the face-to-face program. We just didn't. So it covers the same kind of foundational leadership material. It's webinar based. It's 5 modules plus an optional face-to-face masterclass at the end. I've not been as close to this as to some of the other programs, but my memory is that we ran this the first time with about 20 or 25 participants. The second time with 45 or 50. We're now at 80 per module. So of course there are design modifications that happen when you do that, because you know there are things you've got to do to keep 80 people close and engaged. But that's what we're running with now. So the kind of cadence is that the models that we work with, things like the GROW model, for example, are presented as pre-work on short videos. So one of my colleagues, Joe Porter, is video, you know, speaking to camera, an overview of each of the models. So before they come in for a webinar, there's an expectation that they're familiar with the model, so we don't go over the model in the theory to action webinar. So then they have a facilitated webinar where they explore with a facilitator how might this actually work. And then over a 2-week period, they go back into the workplace and experiment with it, play with it, do things differently based on what they've learned. And then they come back to a reflection webinar where they share, you know, what worked differently. And we've split those reflection webinars. So I think what we're doing now is the theory to action is a single webinar they're recording, so people can watch the recording if they can't get to the webinar. And then the reflection one is split, so that they get to do that reflection in a smaller group. The line manager, usually the line manager, has a role as coach through this program. So conversation at the beginning, overview for them of the program, and then they come in as a coach between, you know, after each theory to action webinar. Their job is to engage around, so how do you find that, and what are you doing, and what are you doing to implement it, and you know, what worked and what didn't work. So that's the design there. Initially, when we first launched it, we were using, Jam, which is a SAP sort of collaboration platform. When we got bigger, we went to a platform called Kahoot, which is a much more sophisticated sort of LMS system that allows people to connect and access readings and access the facilitator and so on in between. So anything else I should be telling you about that one? So it kind of starts to connect them. People can get very siloed in their connections in the organisation. So I guess this is the first time that we put them out there into conversations, not the first time we talk about people in the organisation, but in a structured way, in a learning environment to start to connect with people whose science is very different, or who perhaps are not even doing science, are in a support function. One of the things that we, didn't design into this, but it's a happy outcome, is that it refreshes the manager's knowledge as well. So if they've got to coach someone around, say, the GROW model of coaching and giving feedback, then it means they have to pay attention to it, and we've had heaps of feedback that they've both learnt new models or refreshed models that they'd been exposed to in the past, and so they're learning as well. And hopefully when they're learning about GROW, they're then implementing that into the way that they're working with this program. So that's the Ready to Lead program. We can go to the next one. So this is our Experienced Leader program, which normally is 2 face-to-face residential modules, 3 days each, with an action learning project that is given to them at the end of the first module. They work on it together between modules, a little bit at the second module, and then after the module, and then there's results day, where they present to an audience of 40 or 50 people what they've learned. I started to put down some of the content, and what I've got there is actually nowhere near the content they cover. So there's those things, and the networking becomes much bigger and broader and closer, I guess, because they're working together on a project and they're spending more time together and more informal time together. They also spend time on mindfulness, well-being as leaders, so their own well-being of others, how to have constructive conversations, sort of coaching, transitions and change, and customers. So that's some of the content they work on. The leadership challenge that they have is something that they can apply at their level. So they are typically team leaders or group leaders. So a group leader leads a group of teams. A group leader might have 60 or 80 people in the line reporting up to them through others. So it's kind of contemporary leadership topics. So things like inclusiveness and belonging, having a mental break about what else, coaching, just a range of different leadership topics that are refreshed every time. It's never exactly the same challenge. The process is research it, go out and research it between modules, come back and tell us what you've learned about, so the kind of theoretical base for diversity, for example, in organisations, and then what do you notice in, I'm just getting the wind up from next, I'll go faster. What do you notice in your part of the organisation, then what can you change, and then go back and change it, come back at results day and tell your audience what you have changed. And also share what have you personally learned. So that often gets really quite personal about how they've been changed. You just quickly look at LAIC, Leading Australia's Innovation Catalyst. So much bigger program. We run it in partnership with the Australian Graduate School of Management. Three residential modules with a really big focus on leading self, and then the rest of it is about kind of steps beyond leading your own function. It's about becoming a leadership collective, so leading beyond your own function. It has those pieces: executive coaching, turning learning into action, coaching, job shadowing, and the LAIC team challenge, which is, as I said, something big that the leadership team's been grappling with. 12-month investment. First phase is those modules that are face-to-face, kind of high contact with the business school faculty with us and with CSIRO's leaders. We're bringing industry leaders as well as guest speakers. And then the second half of it, much more around embedding, around shadowing the leader, coaching, etc. And then at the end of the year, come back together, tell us what you're doing differently as a result of this big investment in you. Just on the job shadowing, I said, it's not follow someone for a week. We ask the leader to have the leader that's been shadowed, have a conversation with the person who's going to be shadowing you about what they want to learn, why they picked you, what they want to learn through this experience, and then help them to identify the activities, the forums that you're in that are, that will provide those opportunities, brief them before meetings, debrief them afterwards, so that there's that reflection piece. For any of you who are in government, you'll get this. People love Senate estimates. People love to be able to shadow someone who goes to Senate estimates, so that they can learn. How do you prepare yourself for that sort of challenge? So just my last slide. I won't talk to you, but I'll show it to you. It's just that kind of flow from ready to lead to ELP to LAIC, kind of more intensive, more time, bigger investment, more pieces to be embedding, more challenging projects. Yeah, I will stop now, Natalie. And thank you so much. There's my details. I'm really happy to hear from anyone if you've got, questions or would like to talk to you.
I wish you didn't have to stop, actually, Anne, because I think what we've gathered from everything that you've shared with us, and thank you so much for your generosity, is I think what I've learned from listening to you is actually what's possible. So a number of people across learning and development might be experiencing challenges here and there, but you're actually showing us what's possible in terms of the integration of projects, the 70-20-10 principles, the evidence-based work, and really engaging a group of people who are, as you say, highly technical. They're scientists, they've all got PhDs. So it's some of those things that I think people out there on the line actually struggle with. We've kind of run out of time for questions, but can I throw one question at you? Because I know you're a fabulous coach, and it's a question that Blyde asked just a little time ago. He said, it is related to our, coaching technical people. He said, if you were able to ask a cohort of PhDs only one or two questions in a coaching conversation, what do you think those questions might be?
Goodness.
Just to put you on the spot there, by the way.
Yeah, let me think about that for a minute. Let me think about that for a minute, because one of the things I didn't say, currently doing the Diploma of Positive Psychology and Wellbeing, so I would want it to be a positively framed question. So I think it would be a question about, what's the best self that you can envisage, something like that.
Something that really makes them think around, yeah.
Tell me about your best self. Tell me about your best self.
Yeah, and we often ask questions around, what does leadership mean? And it's a big question, but it's also asking about what does being the best leader or an authentic leader actually mean to you as well.
Yeah. And, I could talk a lot about what leadership means in our organisation. I think Helen Drenan's given us a question there. In what ways could this help you or your team achieve your best science outcomes? And that's kind of what I was getting to in a waffling way as well, is, people are passionate about the science, not just for its own, they're passionate about the science and scientific thinking and scientific approaches. They're passionate about what can be achieved through science, and the challenge for us is what could your people achieve through science, through your leadership, because we know you're great scientists, we know you can do great things. How much more can you achieve if you're a great leader as well? There comes a point at which the leadership is important. So it's that kind of stuff that we want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely question to leave us on as well. So, how can your leadership enable the great science? It's a lovely question for us to reflect on. Well, and on behalf of the Synergy Global team and the Open Door coaching team, there's a lot of thanks coming through on the chat now. So we're extremely grateful for your sharing of the detail that you've shared around how CSIRO does embed learning into the entire organisation. And you've shared with us some of the challenges, you've shared with us how important it is to have the right messages and weave those messages in, through weaving those messages through everything you do. And the other thing I noticed you talked a lot about was partnering. So how the learning and development team actually partners with the business to bring this to fruition. And the final, I've written lots of notes, but the other final reflection I'll say is that quote that you offered around, if it's not terrifying you, then it's not challenging you enough. So we'll all have to reflect on that, about how we're challenging ourselves as well. So once again, I'm really grateful for your generosity in sharing, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll wave goodbye as well.